Most people don't wake up one morning and realize they've been living the wrong life. It happens much more quietly than that. It happens after the children are grown, after the career has settled into something reliable, after the days begin to repeat themselves without much resistance. From the outside, life looks complete, responsible, respectable, earned. This was the case for a man in his 70s, someone who had done what was expected of him, met his obligations, and built a life that looked solid from every angle. Friends spoke of him as someone who had done well. Family described him as dependable. Others pointed to his life as proof that things had turned out the way they were supposed to. The years were marked by familiar rhythms, holidays repeated, routines settled. Conversations began to sound the same. There were no obvious failures, no dramatic collapses, no moment anyone could point to and say, "This is where everything went wrong." And yet, as the years accumulated, something subtle began to surface. A sense that time was moving faster than it once had. Weeks folding into months, months into years, moments passing before they were fully felt. Not dissatisfaction, not regret, at least not yet. Awareness. Looking back, he would later say that the most dangerous thing about getting older isn't illness, loss, or decline. It's how easily life can slip into autopilot. For decades, his days had been shaped by momentum. Responding, managing, maintaining, doing what needed to be done, then doing it again the next day. Always assuming there would be time later. Later to slow down, later to reconnect, later to give attention to the things that never felt urgent, but always mattered. What finally changed wasn't his circumstances. It was the moment he realized the years ahead were no longer abstract. They were numbered. And with that realization, the question shifted. Not what comes next, but what am I still waiting to live? In his 40s and 50s, success quietly became the organizing principle of his life. Not because he was chasing admiration, not because he wanted more than others, but because success felt responsible. It paid the bills, created stability, kept worry at bay. It justified early mornings and late nights. It explained missed dinners and shortened weekends. It gave meaning to exhaustion. Most days began the same way, rising before the house was fully awake, moving through routines he no longer questioned. Coffee poured, news half heard, conversations postponed with the promise of later. Evenings ended with the sense of having been productive, but not fully present. He told himself this was temporary, just this season, just until the next milestone, just until things settled. But stability has a way of becoming permanent. The calendar stayed full year after year. Responsibilities accumulated quietly, and the version of life he was working toward never quite arrived. He measured time by output, by how much he could manage, by how well he could keep everything moving without dropping anything. And because everything was moving, he assumed everything was fine. Years passed that way, not wasted, not empty, just unexamined. There was an evening he remembered clearly years later. Nothing remarkable happened. He was sitting alone in his living room, the television on, but muted, light from the window fading as the day slipped away. The house felt larger than it used to, as though the walls had slowly pulled back over time. The children were grown now. Their voices no longer echoed through the rooms. Their schedules no longer intersected with his. The phone rested nearby, untouched. In that stillness, he noticed something he hadn't felt before. Not loneliness, not sadness, but exposure. The silence didn't accuse him. It didn't comfort him either. It simply reflected his life back to him. He realized how much of his energy had gone into preparing, planning, securing, maintaining, and how little had gone into actually inhabiting the life he had built. That awareness didn't arrive with panic. It lingered. The next morning, it followed him. The week after, it surfaced again. A quiet question, returning without demand. Is this how I want the rest of my time to feel? That night didn't change his life, but it changed how clearly he could see it. As he grew older, it wasn't his mistakes that troubled him most. It was omission, the conversations he kept meaning to have, the places he wanted to see but never prioritized, the relationships he assumed would always have more time. At the moment each choice was made, it felt reasonable. Work was demanding, life was full. There would be another chance. Only later did the pattern become visible. Life doesn't usually take things from you all at once. It asks for small postponements, small delays, again and again, until postponement becomes habit. One loss, in particular, stayed with him. A parent who passed away before certain things were said. There had been no dramatic conflict, just distance that grew gradually, the way it often does when life stays busy and conversations feel easier to delay than to begin. There were plans to talk more later, to clear the air, to revisit old stories and unspoken moments when time felt less pressured. But time doesn't wait for emotional readiness. When the call came, it didn't feel real at first, just another interruption in an already full day. Later, after the arrangements were made and the house grew quiet again, the weight settled in. Not just grief, absence. The absence of conversations that would never happen, of questions that would remain unanswered, of a relationship that would now exist only as memory. He learned then that regret isn't loud or dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It returns quietly in ordinary moments, when there is time to think and nowhere to rush to next. In his later years, something began to soften. Not his awareness, not his memory, his pace. At first, slowing down felt uncomfortable. Saying no brought guilt with it. Stillness felt unfamiliar, even undeserved. Productivity had been tied to identity for so long that letting go felt like losing something essential. But gradually, space opened. Mornings stretched longer. Conversations deepened. Silence stopped feeling like something to fill. Life became smaller, but clearer. Not larger, not easier, truer. He watched younger people move through their days the way he once had. Rushing, striving, carrying invisible pressure. He didn't judge them, he recognized them, and he understood something that only time teaches. People don't ignore wisdom because they're careless. They ignore it because they're busy surviving the season they're in. If there was one truth his life quietly revealed, it was this. Time doesn't feel precious when you believe you have plenty of it. Only later does its value become unmistakable. And by then, the question isn't how to do more, it's how to live more honestly with what remains. He didn't believe in dramatic reinvention. He believed in small corrections, calling people sooner, saying what mattered out loud, choosing depth over momentum. If his life left a legacy, it wasn't in what he accumulated. It was in what he finally understood. That postponement is rarely harmless. That love expressed late still matters. But love expressed now changes everything. That someday isn't a destination. It's a habit, and habits quietly shape entire lives. So if this story leaves anything behind, it isn't a warning. It's an invitation to notice where your days are going, to question what you keep delaying without realizing it, to remember that the life you're living right now is already becoming your legacy. Time doesn't ask for perfection, only attention, and the quiet courage to live what matters, while it is still yours to live.